Good evening, everyone. My name is Salesh Chen. I'm a chartered accountant in public practice, and today we'll be presenting on how to avoid buying a property that's basically a dud or lemon property. So you want to avoid buying those kind of properties. We'll give you examples and we'll talk you through. The presentation is pretty casual, so you can feel free to type in your questions and we'll answer them as we go. And we'll obviously stay back at the end of our presentation and try and answer as many questions as we can. Remember, guys, there's three of us presenting today, so it's free resources for you guys. So you throw all the technical questions, we'll answer them. Just a quick background on myself. I'm a chartered accountant in public practice. I'm also an active property investor, so this is where I invest in cash flow positive properties that basically give me cash flow return every week. I invest in land banking assets, so these are large properties with big land. I can subdivide and build more houses, and I also do trading properties where I buy, do up, and sell houses. I'm a partner here at GRA, so I've been partner since 2012, and I have circa 17 to 18 years experience in property accounting, business accounting, and general accounting and insolvency. Um, Currently in our whole portfolio, we hold 51 properties. So these are our rental properties, which are fully rented, and these are long-term holds. So we're not looking at selling them. We're going to hold them in our portfolio, and we've got 17 new builds underway. And out of the 17 new builds, we'll sell six. We're holding on to the rest of the properties. They are our long-term holds. So a quick background of what's happened and how I started. In 2007, I started here at GRA as a graduate. I was pretty broke with about $30,000 worth of debt. And then I borrowed $16,000 to buy a car. So I borrowed $15,000 to buy a car. And then I borrowed another $1,000 to put some mag wheels on. So all up, I had 47 grand debt. And then, over time, 2008, 2009, I was having a few drinks with Matt and I was meeting my clients and I saw everyone doing well in properties, getting into properties after GFC, so global financial crisis. And in 2010, I bought my first property. So I got into property investing, and as of today, 15 years later, we've got over $50 million in our property portfolio. It's well over $50 million. So this are our long-term holds, cash flow positive, and we get good passive income out of it. The only thing we do with our passive income we get from the portfolio is we pay off all our debt. So we're trying to pay off our debt as fast as we can. But yeah, and that's obviously long-term investments. So if you invest properly between 5 to 7 years, you should be able to create yourself a nice cash flow positive portfolio. Now, guys, before I talk any further, I just want to make it clear I'm not a financial advisor. I'm a chartered accountant, so I cannot give you financial advice. If you got any issues about this, please feel free to email us. But I will not be giving any financial advice. Just a quick market update. Now, this is obviously my opinion, and Than and Maggie as well. We put this together. What are we seeing out there? Um, what we believe is, long-term interest rates are going to come down, and they are already on their way down. So we believe there's probably another 1% drop coming over the next 12 months. This is what we believe. And after talking to economists and looking at what's happening in the economy, we've got a two-tier economy. Some businesses are doing well, some businesses are struggling. Um, we think in 12 months' time, within 12 months, you probably see interest rates in high threes and low fours. That's coming. And my game plan here is as soon as interest rate comes into the fours, I'll be fixing, or low fours or high threes, I'll be fixing my loan for 5 years. That's what I'm aiming to do. And I think interest rates will definitely come down. At the moment, I'm getting 4.8% for 1 year with banks, and I'm taking some of those rates because 4.8 is very cheap. So I'm taking them for 1 year while I'm watching the interest rate market come down. I've been talking to the banks, and they're saying to me on the 20th of August, they anticipate there's another drop coming. So I think there'll be another 100 basis point drop over the next 12 months, and we'll see interest rates come down by 1%. Um, Housing market since 2003, it's mostly been flat. There's been some good buys in the market. We've bought some good properties ourselves. Our clients have been buying some good properties. And I tell you, the only people that I've been seeing out there buying really well, mum and dads who have good income. They're going and borrowing money and buying good assets. Or there's cashed up investors, and they have good capital behind them, so they're running around and buying properties at the moment. Um, we still see a 1 to 2% gain by the end of 2025. So we see property prices have stabilized and they are actually heading up very slowly. Now, if you do have a good asset, if you present your property well, you've invested the money in it, you can probably still get 2021 prices if you've presented the property and you've put the money into renovation and all of that. Because good houses sell within days of coming on the market. There's a particular property that I was chasing in the market. I didn't even know it came to the market. It sold within 25 hours of coming on the market. So, it was, I wasn't in the country, I was away, and it just came within a day. It sold, gone. Um, well, we also think between, from now till end of 2026, we'll probably see prices go up and more towards end of 2026 when interest rates drop. We see, a price increase of between 4 to 7%. And I've seen this before when interest rates come down, property prices go up. Property prices need to go up because that helps the economy. People borrow money to build houses. People can borrow money against their home if it goes up in value to do up their houses, obviously upgrade their cars or buy investment properties. We also are watching easier credit supply coming in. Banks are lending again. And guys, if you wait till the end of this seminar, I've got something to tell you. I've just been offered a product by a banker for GRA client base. So you've got to stay till the end to hear that. Now, Then and Maggie don't even know about this because I've just been offered that product in the last 45 minutes. So I had to make some notes on it. So stay till the end. This is an amazing product I will talk about towards the end. And this is only available to GRA clients, and they're doing a good deal on this. Um, we also see immigration will recover. We see a lot of people will move in into the country as immigration rules are softened. Mum and dads moving into the country, following their kids. We're going to attract some highly skilled people. They're going to move into the country. We definitely need low skilled laborers as well. We need rest home caregivers. We need nurses, support staff. We need cleaners. We need that. There's massive demand for these people. So we'll see them moving back into the country, and we'll see an increase in demand for housing. Uh, it happens all the time. I've seen it over and over again. 2012, the immigration door opened. A lot of skillful people moved here, and property prices went up, and so it helps the economy. So immigration door hasn't been open fully. Once it does, you'll see movement in that. And also, don't forget the government have started spending money. As of Sunday, they have announced that they'll be spending another $6 billion on roading, hospitals, and all those things. And the government spending is anticipated to go up over the next few years, which helps the economy. Today, guys, we got Then and Maggie joining us as well. Both of them are active property investors. They buy and hold, and Then is a big time property trader. He likes to trade. Maggie's more focused on buying and hold, studying the property and how to add values. As you can see on the side there, that's their credentials, and they've helped a lot of clients over the years. They're really smart guys. You definitely want to be friends with them. And also, if you are looking at properties, you'd like to get a second opinion, Maggie and Then is your person to contact, and they'll show you how to do due diligence on properties to avoid any lemon properties or any dud properties, right? We want to buy good properties that's going to go up in value, and they'll show you how to do that. And we'll show you examples of where we've made mistakes as well, and that's coming up shortly. Now, just a quick brief about GRA, if you don't know what GRA is and what we do, just to give you a quick background. So, GRA is an accounting firm in Auckland. We specialize in property accounting, business accounting. We are well connected into the property industry, so we give specific tax advice on property structures. We work with your bankers, we work with your insurance advisors, and all of those guys. We also do business accounting. So if you need your GST returns, PAYE returns, your tax returns, and your financials done, we do that. One of our biggest side of the business is asset planning. This is where we focus on protecting your asset, right? Now, people think you only protect your family home. No, you got to protect your business as well, right? So we come up with ways how to minimize tax, how to protect your assets. We do property education as well, property advisory and education. So this is where we teach you how to do property investments. And one of the things that's famous out there that GRA does is property school, is to get you the knowledge about investing into properties and provide you with supply chain. We introduce our mortgage brokers who you should use for rental properties, for finance product, for development products, and we have access to bankers as well, so we can give you access to that. We also we don't provide, we give you introduction to insurance brokers to ensure you have the right insurance cover in place. And we also help you get landlord insurance and protect your assets. We'll talk about insurance a bit later. So, analysis, how to avoid a lemon. How do you avoid a property to ensure that it doesn't harm you in any way? Like when we say harm, it's got all these issues that you have to put funds in, or it's cash flow negative, right? We are not a big fan of cash flow negative properties unless you're a high income earner. You don't mind topping your loan up by $300-400 a week, right? But most people out there, most investors struggle with topping up loan. So here's an example that we've taken a property in Swanson Road we own. So there's two houses there. But what we've done is we're going to analyze this property to show you when it is a good property to invest in, when it is not a good property to invest in, right? So we'll show you how we analyze a deal. And this is our IP. This is what we do every day before we say yes to a property and we buy it. So let's say this is a single dwelling site. So currently it's a two dwelling site. Let's say there's the second property is not there. It's a single dwelling site. So you buy the property for around 950, and by the time you settle the property, it costs you 952. The projected market value would be 1.1 million because you've got one property on 1,000 square meter site. Your instant equity is 148,000, so you're 13% up on your instant equity. Now let's look at your cash flow. What happens to your cash flow if there's one property on site? You get market rent of $800 a week. That's 41,600. After your operating expenses, which is insurance, management fee, rates, repairs, and maintenance, your operating expenses is $8,800. So 41,000 minus $8,800, you end up with $32,000 in your hand, right? Let's say you're 100% geared, right? If you're 100% geared or 100% finance, 32 minus 47, you are just about $15,000 negative a year. That means $300 a week negative. Now, we will tell you not to buy this property, right? Because it's to fund $300 negative a year, you need to be on good salary so you can fund this, right? And if you are 70% geared, it's still negative. So we'll tell you not to buy this. Now, the only time we'll tell you to buy this is if you decide to put a second dwelling in. So let's say you buy this property and put a second dwelling, and say your purchase price then changes to 1.3. Now there's a second dwelling on site. So with one dwelling, the property is negative. With a second dwelling, we've got a second dwelling at 1.3. It cost you about 1.3 million to buy the property. The projected market value is 1.5 million. You instant equity is 198,000. So you've made 13% instant equity. Remember, now the second dwelling, you got more rental income coming in. So your rental income goes from $800 to $1,600 a week. Your rent is $83,000 a year. This is your market rent. After your expenses, you're left with $66,000, right? If you're 100% geared, so 100% borrowing, you're going to pay the bank 65,000 at 5%, you'll end up with $1,400. You'd buy this property because it's self-paying, it's giving you cash flow. This is a good property because it's got two dwellings on it. You'll buy this property with your eyes closed. And what this shows is you want to chase properties with multi-dwelling. Now, if the same property is got a single site on it, it becomes negative. Now you got multi-dwelling income on it, you are running positive. Big tick. Going from negative 15,000 to positive 1,400, right? So you're better off roughly $300 a week if you have a second dwelling on this property. It's not costing you any money. Remember, the other side of the calculation is this property will go up in value over 10 years. So your capital growth, your wealth will increase, and it's not costing you any money to hold on to this property. Now, let's imagine if this property you had to buy for $1.3 million and put 200,000 renovation cost, right? So you bought it for 1.3 million. You spend 200,000 on renovating the property. So the total cost is 1.5 million. Your projected market value, say 1.6 million, you've made 98,000 equity, 6% instant equity. What happens to your cash flow? You get $1,600 a week. And after paying your operating expenses of $16,000, you're left with $66,000. Interest on 100% cost at 5%. Now remember, you've borrowed money plus you borrowed money to renovate the property. It's costing you $75,000. You're negative $8,000 a year. So if you had to buy the same property, spend 200 grand renovating the property, you would be negative $8,000 a year. At that point, we will tell you not to buy the property, right? This now becomes a lemon, right? You look at my option one, when we had one dwelling, the property is a lemon at one with one site on it or one property on it, right? Because you're losing $300 a week. With two sites, you break even. Big tick, you buy the property. But if you have to buy the property and do $200,000 of renovation work, renovation is expensive, guys. Don't think renovation is cheap. Everything's gone up, and then we'll show you examples of what's gone up um, with renovation. Then and I, we can probably hardly do renovations for less than 100 grand. Everything's so expensive out there because materials are up. So with $200,000 renovation, suddenly you're losing $9,000 a year, right? So the property is no longer attractive. You don't want to buy this if it's running a 9,000 negative, unless you have big income. You don't care about 9,000 a year, right? So what we did with this property, this is what we did. We paid 1.3 million for this property. We spent 200 grand renovating the property, right? So our total cost was 1.6 million, right? So we spent 1.6 million. Sorry, our projected market value came back at 1.6 million, right? So our instant equity was $98,000. And we got 6% as our instant equity. Now, what we did was we customized this property to a particular tenant, and they've signed a 10-year lease on this property. They're paying us $2,500 a week. It's $130,000 a year lease we've signed on the two dwellings because we customized this property for two disability tenants, right? Our operating expense is about $10,000 a year. After paying that, we end up with 120. As after paying our operating expenses, 120 in our pocket. Interest on 100% lending, say $75,000, we are still banking $45,000 a year as cash flow positive. So after everyone is paid, we're banking $900 a week. And we're going to bank $900 a week for the next 10 years because we customize the property to this particular tenant's needs, right? A disability tenant. So we're banking $900 cash every year. So this is why we bought this property. Now, what we did with this property is we made one slight change. As part of buying this property and doing a disability fit out to match this particular tenant, we got our $200,000 renovation cost refunded to us. So our instant equity is gone up to 1.3 million to buy, right? We got our 200,000 back because that's now we don't have to cough that 200 grand up. Our market value came back 1.6. We made 298,000 as our instant equity, 19%, right? And on top of that, we are running it cash flow positive. See, it's now 54,000 cash flow positive at 100% geared is because we don't have to pay interest on the $200,000 renovation cost. We got that money back. So we are getting about $1,100 a week cash flow positive out of this property. And we're using the funds to clear the debt down as fast as we can. So this is sometimes you have to work out what you can do with the property. And there's a lot of tenants out there. They are looking for disability homes. And there's facilities and funding in place to house people with disability issues. And the government actually backs you up into this. So this is where a property has now become, it could have been a lemon property, is now become an amazing rental property. So you've got to just work out what the properties are good at doing, and you aim and you chase those properties. So this property is doing us $55,000 a year cash flow positive. Sorry, Than. Oh, there you go. Now we're gonna Than's gonna join in and show you an example of lemon. So when you talk about lemon, a property that's not that good, we'll just make it very clear. Now then,
I was gonna say there it is.
but lemons do taste nice. I like lemon, especially with fish and chips. That taste good. Then, do you want to give
Thank
us an example of lemon?
Yeah, sure, no worries. So what I like to, what I go through is an example of a trade. So what I mean by trade is a property that we bought to renovate, to add value, and then sell. And so we bought a rundown property. So this was purchased on in November 23. On the top of the right-hand side is where you see the before photo, and the bottom is the after photo. So e- expected profit, we were looking at a margin of 80,000 to 100,000. Purchased for 526,000, and the renovation cost about 175, and we ended up selling it for 810K. So you're going, oh, the numbers straight, but then we actually made a pre-tax profit of 20K. So what went wrong in this transaction? Luckily, the margin was it was there to save us, but the due diligence here was something that we could have done better. And firstly, the property didn't have a CCC. We knew that, so we were able to tackle the work on that one. Um, and then there was issues with the title, which I'll go in details. So showing some before and after photos. So this was a full renovation, double glazing window, full bathrooms, kitchen. It was nicely done. And someone's, enjoying the beautiful renovation and moved in. But in details, when we're looking at it, it was a cross lease title. So when purchasing, we looked at the title, and it was just a carport that was missing. So it was, we took the assumptions, and having talking to a few people, uh, discussions, and said, look, it's going to be a pretty straightforward fix, rather about 7K to update the flats plan. However, once the renovation's done and got on the market, we got into more detailed defect issues with the title. Um, what happened is the cross lease was not registered. And so what that meant was it was not a 7K fix. It became a 40K fix with all the experts, and council wanted to get an actual proper subdivision or resource consent application put through. They needed flat assessments, which a lot of these other extras that was not accounted for. So that obviously hurt, going from an 80 to a 20K profit. But we make mistakes, and the thing is that now we make sure that we get our titles checked very carefully, and making sure that that mistake doesn't happen. So the important here is that is doing a due diligence, and we will go through examples of how to do due diligence thoroughly later. But key takes here is something as simple as something on a piece of paper, a defective title can cost you so much on the other end.
And you also got to be careful here. Defective titles. Luckily, Then was good with the neighbors, and he made it happen. But if our neighbors threw a tantrum, there's three other neighbors. If they threw a tantrum, the cost would have blown out because we would have had to take the neighbors to court. And I've had that before where I had to take neighbors to court, and it just cost you a fortune. And in
Yep.
this case, we got away, with 40 grand cost.
And I guess the one great advice there, Celestius, is that whenever you buy a property, or, just go and introduce yourself to your neighbor, because, they are the next best person there to look after your property. Or if anything needs done, you need their permission. Or in my cases in the past, if you bought a property, being good with neighbors, they could, when their time to come to sell, they might come knocking on your door.
Yeah. And if you'll get on the bedside of the neighbors, which Then and I have recently on the side, and that's cost me about 480,000 so far,
Yes.
in legal fees and that on the development side. So you want to be on the good side with neighbors. Blame Then. I'll blame it on Then.
I tried my best. You can't please everyone.
Yeah. So hard to avoid lemons. Come on, tell us that then. How do we avoid this? And Maggie?
Yeah, so I think Maggie's more the in-depth details when it comes to going through the due diligence. I think she hasn't bought any lemons, haven't you?
I've managed not to buy any lemons, yes, but I've probably missed out on good deals as well. Was a bit cautious. Um, but the key really to avoiding those problem properties is to do really comprehensive due diligence. And that's investigating and researching a property. We should never assume anything because you could be wrong. We check everything, and if it's really important, we'll double check it. And we always use quality advisors too. So whether it's your lender, your broker, solicitor, accountant, building surveyor for building reports, or of course, depending on the type of property, there could be other
Yeah.
experts, engineers or advisors that you'll need to seek information from, especially if
The,
you're
the,
intending to do a build project.
well, the main one, Maggie, here is the
Mm.
lender or broker, right? Because, when you get a property under contract, you want to rush across and make sure you can get your funding in place. Now, guys, what you got to remember, even if your banker says yes, you got a pre-approval, and if you can't get insurance on the property, you can't draw your funds down because in your pre-approval, it clearly says to draw the funds down, you must have insurance in place, right? So very important. We
Mm.
work with your lender, and that's Do you agree, Maggie?
Yeah, and even when a lender gives pre-approval to borrow, it's still subject to them approving the specific property that you want to purchase. Mm.
Yes, absolutely. And I've had this happen to me. I've gone to Rotorua and I've bought properties, cash, unconditional offer. And I've gone to my lender. I go, look, I bought this property cash unconditional offer. It's an amazing deal. The first thing the lender does is Googles the property and goes, we're not going to bloody pay for this. Look at the state of this property. So I've learned my lesson there. What I do is if
Mm.
I have to buy a do up, I buy it with cash, so I buy it outright, and then I send the lender the revaluation and all the latest photos because the lenders do Google the properties to see what it looks like. That's one of their requirements.
Yeah. Guess gone are the days that you'll get a loan just for any old thing that's falling down the cliff with rotten piles
Exactly.
and a landslip. Mm. So,
Exactly.
you know, people might wonder what is due diligence if they're not familiar with that term. Well, it's
And
really,
guess what's on the top of the list?
yeah, exactly. Um, it's really just a term that we use in the investing world uh, that describes the research and the investigation that you would do before you buy a property, since it's very much a case of buyer beware. So, of course, a good quality solicitor has to do a thorough check of the title because not only in the example that Than described, but there can be other problems with titles, and they're not necessarily that complicated, but they can be very expensive to fix. And of course, as Salesh suggested, you have to confirm that you can insure the property.
Mm.
LIM reports, so people will be pretty familiar with those, but you need to read them and then seek advice or ask some appropriate person's opinion if there's anything in there that you don't understand or that looks a bit fishy. The LIM report's a key way to identify if there's any unconsented work on the property. Building inspections. So again, the quality of them depends entirely on the quality and competency of the person that you're hiring to do them, but you'll be using a building inspection to identify not only any issues with the property, but future work that's coming up. For example, whether the roof is near the end of its life, because replacing something expensive like a roof or a new hot water cylinder, you need to factor that cost into your analysis. And also to see whether it's compliant, perhaps with healthy homes, if it's going to be a rental property, healthy home standards, or with all the consents that it should have had. Property files, not as well known as LIM reports, but you order those in addition to a LIM report from council, and it has more information on it than your standard LIM report. A really useful thing to find on the property file, that's not always there, are the plans of the property and copies of the building consents that people have obtained over time. And that helps you try and figure out whether there's any unconsented work. Natural hazards. I mean, obviously Auckland's had its fair share of those recently, flooding, landslips, but in other parts of the country, earthquakes as well. So not only might that impact your property, but also the cost of insurance or potentially even your ability to get insurance.
And you have to be careful here. That's a very important point Maggie's making. If the property has been flood damaged and you're obviously getting it for a bargain and you think you can get around the banks, well, be careful because sometimes the banks do look up and they have information on that. So you suddenly your pre-approval won't work anymore because the banks will go, we're not going to fund you this. So if there is a property that's been had flood damages issues with it, and it's probably okay now to buy it, because everything's been fixed. You just got to get permission from the banks before you go unconditional. There's no
Mm,
harm in doing that. There's no harm in asking. It'll take you 5 minutes to get an answer, then going unconditional and getting in trouble because you can't settle the property.
mm. Absolutely. Just a general assessment of the neighbourhood.
Mm.
What's there? Is there public transport? Are there shops or gas stations or health facilities, schools,
Yeah,
parks, type of thing that tenants or buyers, if you're trading property, look for. Um,
yeah.
the quality of the neighbourhood, and if there's any specific issues that affect the area. So
You
local,
definitely
not.
you definitely want to run away from then he's your neighbor. It's,
Either that, i.e., tinny house, you don't want to be near it.
oh, yeah, definitely. You don't want to be in a gang associated area because those areas never go up in value.
Mm,
And you want to avoid that. And there's a couple of places in Rotorua we avoid because they're gang related areas. We stay in areas where basically middle class, easy to rent, mum and dad, working class are there. Those are good areas.
mm. Um, and the local knowledge is invaluable too.
Mm,
Um, so if you're buying out of area, you probably ought to build your knowledge of a local area if you're not familiar with it and don't live there.
mm,
So
mm.
this little humorous slide, but I think it really shows how common sense plays a part in this as well. So you've got your perfectly reasonable looking area. Um, then our middle area is starting to look a bit dubious because there's various factors that you want to consider, the quality of the tenant as well as the quality of the property and the risk of property damage,
Yeah.
either from your tenant or from their visitors or neighbours. Um, and definitely the one at the end there, I'd spend your money on a holiday instead.
You don't want your neighbors to have plyboard on their windows and doors. And Finn, can you just show that on your screen?
That one
There's that one there. You got to watch for
there.
those things. There's probably someone living in there because their windows are gone, but they're using plyboard. But
Mm,
funnily, if you look at the middle one, the way it says where Maggie goes doubtful, you always look at those chairs they're sitting on the deck. That's a sign that it's more of a beneficiary neighborhood when you see all those chairs because they like to sit outside all day and stare at cars. I mean, it could be a really good area, but that's a sign we look out for all the time is those chairs sitting on the deck.
mm.
And yeah, sometimes they bring their sofa out and put it on the deck as well.
I thought
Um,
they were there to get a suntan.
yeah, that could be it. Yeah,
Um, Natural hazards, so we've touched on them before, floods, earthquakes, landslips, that type of thing. In a coastal city like Auckland, it's also coastal inundation. So there's a lot of information available publicly. These are screenshots taken from Auckland Council's GIS system, and they're showing flood areas and landslip risks. So on a really high level view, you can see South Auckland there. So it's subject primarily to flood areas, the various areas of blue that are not obviously the ocean. If we look over to West Auckland, where obviously the topography is different, it's a lot hillier, all those little orange and brown areas that are indicated there, that's areas of landslip risk. And then the yellow around the coast that you can see there is actual slips, record of slips that have occurred. But if you zoom in, so obviously you want to avoid any properties that are subject to those problems. But if you zoom right in, and they've just taken a little random area of West Auckland, you'll see that there are certain properties that are impacted by flooding, which is shown in the blue there, or that slips have occurred, which are the little yellow dots with the lines off them. But there's a whole lot of properties in any given area that are free of the various hazards that impact others. So the key is that you want to buy the stuff that isn't identified as being subject to a problem.
yeah, and you need to be careful, like what Maggie was just showing there. Then can we
Mm,
just go back to the slide?
mm,
Like Maggie showing this, you could be on a section and there's a flood path. and Sen, can you show an example? So if you move the
Yeah,
cursor next to the yellow one down here, you can see
the little
um,
dotted blue lines are the overland
the
flood
yeah,
paths. Mm,
you can see all that. That can have an impact on your land.
mm,
So you've got to be careful, and obviously that will reflect on the price you'll pay for it. Again, it's just having the right knowledge and the right people behind you to obviously work out the right price for the properties. It doesn't mean that they're lemon properties. It doesn't mean that. It could be that you might have to do some extra engineering work, but you can negotiate the price down.
mm,
Yeah.
I guess I could throw an example where I looked at a property a few weeks ago. Celeste, I think you were on holiday at that time, and Maggie, you're aware about that property, and it was a home and income property, but it had a floodplain on it, and the agent brought it to me. It's a deal. It's a steal. It's on a floodplain, but it hasn't flooded. There's no issues. You could do moisture testing and everything. No insurance claim, clean. So the map showing that it is, but um, it hasn't happened. So we've done further due diligence and then looking at it to subdivide into two lot. And one of the questions that came up from the due diligence period is that property, when we do the subdivision, it could be subject to a condition by council to say alert that there may be potential for flooding in the future, and it'll be an alarm bell on the property file on the limb. So we said no, because there's no way we want to buy something and take that risk in selling that property after spending all that money. So we said no deal.
Mm.
mm.
See, and again, just working with guys who know what they're doing, and that's really important.
Yeah, and you walk away with all your money intact, able to look for something else that's better instead of being potentially stuck in a problem that you could lose money on. Yeah. So flooding, obviously, that's very topical at the moment in a lot of different
Mm.
places around the country. And it has a lot of implications too. So not only might there be damage to the property that you have to pay to repair and the cost of those repairs, but there's the future risk of flood events perhaps occurring more frequently or becoming more severe, which then, of course, could lead to insurance cost increasing or cover being withdrawn altogether and potentially a property becoming uninsurable. The value will decline, and it can stop you even flood areas within a property could prevent you from building or subdividing if that was something that you were planning to do now or in the future.
Mm.
They obviously won't be very appealing to purchasers if you're selling or when you go to sell in the future. And if properties are having problems with flooding and tenants' vehicles or possessions are being damaged or they're getting stuck into their properties or having to leave them, they're not going to be very popular with tenants either.
Yeah, and again, the biggest thing coming back to that is insurance, guys.
Mm.
If you lose insurance on your property, you can't get insurance. You've got an issue there. Your banks can call up your loan. So it's
Mm.
really important that if you did have, if you are looking at buying flood damaged property that's got flooding issues, you get it checked, by three to four different people, and Maggie and Ten can help you. They can
Mm.
guide you to the right people to look at the issues, and then based on that, you can make an informed decision. Either you want to buy it or you don't want to buy it. Yeah. All right. Thanks, Maggie.
I guess also the other thing is to look at services, and this is more towards development, isn't it, Maggie?
Mhm. Yes, but it's also relevant, I think, just even if you're not planning to develop your property, uh, if it has development potential, the next purchaser might be looking to develop, and perhaps you're hoping to cash in on that development when you sell in the future, even if you're not intending to do it yourself. So in Auckland, for example, but I know these problems are occurring elsewhere as well. There's a lack of capacity in the sewer network. So currently, those areas that are sort of shown in the peachy, pinky colour, they're identified as not having sufficient capacity in the sewer mains for anybody to be able to connect new dwellings to them. The purple are identified as not having enough water supply for new dwellings, and then the grey is impacted by both. But that doesn't mean that if you're not in that area that you aren't necessarily at risk. So it's always worth investigating if you're looking to purchase with any intention of either doing some development or adding dwellings yourself or selling on for that purpose to somebody. But even with existing houses, a lot of towns and cities will have no stormwater main infrastructure or suburbs without any. And so the existing houses that are there will be discharging their stormwater into soak pits. But that's often not an acceptable solution for new dwellings. So it could be preventing any construction or addition of dwellings to backyards in those areas if there's nothing to connect the stormwater to. So some typical things to avoid, or the typical type of properties to avoid, would be buying in any gang or meth infested areas of the country or specific cities or towns. Negative cash flow. Do you want to talk a little bit more about that, Salesh?
Yeah, so you got to be careful, guys. Negative cash flow assets can be quite dangerous, and you might go, "No, I can afford $200-300 a week," which is fine. But what happens is if there's something happens to your income, or there's some changes to your lifestyle, let's say you have another child, or your kids might need help, you have to give them some money. Suddenly, that $200-300 a week negative you are starts hitting you. So be very careful buying properties that are negative cash flow. Like we say, unless you've got good income, you don't care, right? But we want you to be very careful buying negative cash flow. If you do end up buying negative cash flow, well, you look at ways of making it positive. Can we get a cheaper interest rate? Can we put a second dwelling on site? Can we put a cabin in, to recover the negative and get it up to positive or break even? So be careful buying negative properties, and watch your cash flow and your income to make sure you're protected. Like I said, there's a lot of people out there, they don't care. They'll just buy it because they want to have an asset. Some people buy negative cash flow assets because they can see the value of the property will be higher in the future. We've bought properties that are negative cash flow. And the reason we bought them because they were right in the sport we wanted the properties to be in. One of the properties we paid 2.5 million about 10 years ago. Um, we're currently rezoning and getting a resource consent to put 90 units on it. So that was a bargain, but it was a lot of risk we took back then. At 2.4 million 10 years ago, it was a lot of money. But hopefully we're just about there with our resource consent to build 90 houses. It's in the middle of our town, so hopefully we'll get the sign off on it. Also avoid properties with CCC because you can't get insurance because you can't rent properties if there's no CCC unless your insurance agrees to insure the property. Um, if you are going to buy a property without CCC, you negotiate well and make sure you do your due diligence to work out the cost of getting CCC on it. Don't underestimate the cost of getting CCC. You might think it's 70 or 80 grand. It could be 200 grand. So do your DD properly before you go on condition. Now, watch out if there's leaky buildings. Um, unless you are an amazing builder with amazing skills to pull a leaky building through, be careful if you're mum and dad investors, watch out for those leaky buildings. Don't put your hands on it because they can be quite expensive to fix. And it could probably sit there empty for years and years. Properties with earthquake issues. Now, that's something, Maggie, you're probably more familiar with, helping Matt through what the earthquake issues were. And there's specialist reports you can do. And I don't know what they call it, ECQ or something like that. Maggie? On
Matt certainly did a lot of earthquake repair work down in Christchurch
Yeah.
a little while back now, but where you could buy the earthquake damaged homes really cheaply, but then had to go through the whole process of repairing them and then having them certified as sound so that they are insurable again. But even for dwellings that haven't actually been damaged in an earthquake, if you're investing in an earthquake-prone area, your insurance costs will be a lot higher.
Mm.
And I think it
Uh,
pays to think about how you'll be able to repair those buildings if an earthquake did damage them.
well, I know some of our clients are not able to get insurance in Wellington, so they have to go and look for specific companies. So be careful. I know Wellington is marked for earthquake issues, so you got to watch those areas. And like we discussed, flood areas, in detail earlier. So careful with flooding properties or flood zones going through your property or flood path. You got to watch all that. And if you don't understand all this, get hold of someone who does. And Maggie and Thane are good at this. They can guide you through.
And of course, a fairly common sense sort of thing to consider, but that can easily be overlooked when you're busy thinking about um, more technical things like titles or flood zones is whether there's sufficient demand from tenants for the type of property you're looking to purchase or build and bring to the rental market. So,
Correct.
say a 1 or 2 bedroom dwelling will probably rent fairly easily almost anywhere because it suits single or couples or retirees or on a modest budget or people coming out of relationships or on their own, or even very small families that might need just 1 bedroom for a child. So unless there's an oversupply or the rent's too high, you can probably find a tenant just about anywhere. But for example, a more bespoke house or a much bigger house, there might be fewer takers for it. Um, and perhaps they suit locations where tenants typically have large families or whether multiple generations like to live together.
Mm.
Mm. Little studio units might suit sort of fairly inner city or central town locations. And of course, student or the type of properties that suits students, flats need to be near a university.
You've also be careful when you're buying flats or houses, or sorry, flats or units that are below 7 meters squared. I think they're below 49 square meters. The banks won't fund them.
Mm,
Something along the line. So you've got to check that they are the correct property to buy. They've got to be the right size for the banks to fund. You could come to me and say, "Hey, look at this property I bought for 300 grand. It's going to be rented for $750 a week." But the chances are, because it's so small, the banks are not going to fund it. So you've got to be very careful what you're buying. So again, get your banks to sign it off. Otherwise, you're going to be in trouble there, getting trying to sort out your funding.
Guess the next thing to look at is like you looked at, okay, what not to avoid, what to buy. But the other question is how much is to pay? What is the right price for the property that you're looking to buy? And in property school and when we do analysis for clients, even for myself and any deals that we look at, we do a comparable sales analysis. So what it technically we're trying to do is similar jobs to what a real estate agent's doing or a property valuer doing is trying to ascertain the value of the asset that we're looking to buy by looking at the evidence, what it sold, what did the neighboring property sold for, what its similar properties like this sold for. So then we're in the same location so that we could then say this is the value for that property. So we want to know the current market value, so what is worth as is in the current condition, and then what is our end market value, whether that is to buying to renovate to add value or adding converting a large room into a third or fourth bedroom, or even if you're doing a subdivision, you're getting a big piece of land and you want to add smaller dwelling into it. So if you're going to build 7 houses, what are those 7 houses going to be worth? So you want to assess what is worth now and what is it going to be at the end. And in order to do that, what we like to do, what we you could do is there are free websites like One Roof, Homes, Property Value, and then there's property paid tools like Property Guru, Relab, and the REINZ, which is what the real estate agents do. So all these tools have informations that are available. Some are free, some are paid, for you to do your research. So what we tend to do is trying to narrow down to the local area and find what is that is a good comparable. So we want to be comparing apples to apple. And it's easier said than done because when you start you spend 2, 3, 4, 5 hours trying to do analysis and also making judgment. So you want to identify similar properties. So same suburbs, there's no point looking at 3 suburbs, 4 suburbs away because those will be different value. If not, then you look for nearby locations, but then you're trying to make a adjustment for whether, if it's closer to the motorway, it's closer to a better zone, school zones or hospitals, etc. Land size, age of the building, the condition. So all those informations needs to be compared for each property that you're looking at, and then also looking at gather sales data. Ideally within the last 6 to 12 months. No point looking at data 5 years ago. And you could use the free or paid tools to make those assessment. And the other thing is that when you're looking at a certain area and you are focusing in some suburb, and the more you do, you become an expert in the not in the air in the area because your data is in the back of your head because you've done a current assessment on a property 2 weeks ago that was down the road, and then you've done further down the other street, and immediately you know those numbers because those data are sitting in the back of your head. And then you also make those adjustments if you can't find data. If a property was in better condition to compare to the one that you have, you make those adjustments to the prices to the point where you actually come to an actual value. It's never going to be accurate, but you want to get it to a range so that, you could work off this is worst case scenario, this is what it's going to be worth. And in the high end, it's going to be this end. And you've got, 10, 20 comparable sales that you could collaborate together and then take an average value. But, a lot of practice goes into it. But the more you do it, the better you become.
And guys, like if you're struggling with it, you got people like Maggie and Thin who specialize in this. I call Maggie and Thin every day for help. They know what they're doing. So you can have Maggie and Thin on your side. I mean, somewhere between I think you're $250 plus GST an hour.
Yes.
That's what you are. And clients use Maggie and Thin all the time because if they can't resolve the problem, they will pass on to a supplier who will be able to help you answer the question if there's issues with the site. And for a couple of $100 here and there, you save yourself basically a lemon property, right? You buy something that's nicer. Okay, guys. So here's some recommendation. Now, this is my recommendations. Obviously, over the years, I've been presenting. I've been helping a lot of my clients. I can tell you this: 95% of my client base are multimillionaires. So, and they were not born with money. They were normal mum and dads who either worked on normal jobs or they had businesses running. And what they did over time, they saved money and bought houses, right? Buying properties work, right? Long term, it works. Between 7 to 10 years, you can create yourself a very nice portfolio. So here's my recommendations for anyone thinking, well, property investing is hard and you do nothing. Okay, we get a lot of this all the time. You do nothing, and because the reason is you're nervous or you haven't got the right people around you, right? So don't do nothing. Act sooner, not later. You always hear people saying, I wish I did this 10 years ago, right? I was presenting 6 years ago and people were telling me that, you know? And 10 years ago, I had people telling me I wish I did this 10 years ago. So it's never the right time to invest, right? Properties are always expensive, right? You ask Maggie, you ask Then, you ask me. Every time I bought a property, I felt like I've been ripped off, right? And it's just what it feels like on the day. And then don't use lack of time or fear as an excuse, right? All you do is if you don't have time, open your iPhone and look at your screen time, right? That will show you how much time you're spending on your phone. And I have to say, I spend a lot of time on my phone, but I do business on my phone. So I'm always talking. I don't know about Then's phone. He's got some weird stuff in there.
You, you can't, it's mine's a Samsung, so we're very productive.
Yeah, he's got fast link to OnlyFans account or something like that. Um, draw yourself a timeline with targets. This is very important. So you might be, in your 30s or 40s, or in your 20s. Draw yourself a 10-year timeline. Where do you want to be in 10 years' time? If you're in 20s, you might want to have a couple of kids, and have some nice cars and a house and a batch. Well, how are you going to achieve that? Draw yourself a timeline. Work it out. If you're in your 30s, 40s, what do you want in the next 10 years of your life, or 50 or 60? What do you want? You know, you could be a 50-year-old sitting on a very expensive house that you could probably cash up and move into a smaller home, use the surplus money to buy investment properties. So that gives you more choice in life. And surround yourself with the right people, very important. I only surround myself with people who do property investing. Now, I do buy shares here and there, but I only play with it. It's not my biggest investment. Um, I personally like to buy properties and I like to have cash in the bank. So when I have cash in the bank, I know I've got control of the whole portfolio, and I can shut the banks down if they start misbehaving. And you think of long term when it comes to property investing, you can't think of it as short term. Think of long term. Where do you want to be in 5 or 10 years' time? And I can tell you, if you invest correctly, between 7 and 10 years' time, you could have a nice portfolio that you can retire on and live off your passive income. So it's really important, you think long term when it comes to property investing. Then can I go to the next slide? So this is a roadmap that we do, and this is basically to guide you, because obviously, we've given you so much information just now. You must be confused, right? And fair call if you are, because we help you, we guide you through. So what we've done is we've come up with this roadmap. We work out where you are now. That's one of the things we do, and then we work out where you want to be. Where do you want to be in the next 5, 10 years? And how long will you work for? So we look at that. We have a software called WellSuite, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. That's to help you work out what you want. So what you then do is get the right knowledge in place. You got to know what you're doing. You got to have the supply chain. And what we do at GRA is we promote our clients to do property school. Now, property school helps you, understand about property transactions, the lingo, the language that lawyers, accountants use. It gives you a supply chain of real estate agents, banks, lawyers that you can use, and some of the terminology, such as due diligence, how to write them in the contract, and all of that. And you get access to the bankers as well. And once you do property school, if you feel like doing development school, go for it. But most people prefer to do property school as their first option. Don't do development school first. You do property school first. Then you get a strategy put in place. What do you want? Are you wanting to trade, or are you wanting to hold properties, or are you wanting to do both? And then on that basis, we set up your structure, you know. And the structures are important because once we set up the structures, then the banks can organize your funding accordingly. So here at GRA, we'll do the structures, then we'll work with your banker to make sure there's finance put in place according to the structures we've recommended and to ensure you get the right tax advantage at the end. You will meet our bankers at property school. If you do property school, you'll meet them. And then once we have your finances pre-approval, then you can go out and hunt for properties to buy. And if you get stuck, you're trying to buy something, you got Maggie and Then. And if Maggie and Then can't resolve the issues, it either will come to me or will get passed on to one of the external suppliers to fix. So we are quite informative. We help you through the whole process from start till end. And this is how we met Maggie and Then. They basically came to a seminar, and they worked through the strategy. They put their structures in place. They put their funding in place. Now, Maggie, what did you spend roughly? Property school is about $500 to have it. Maggie, how much do you spend on obviously studying and getting your knowledge up to date?
Uh, well, like then, we joined a tutoring program, and the cost at the time was 35,000, I think.
And that was back 2000.
2014.
Yeah, 2014. So you
Mm.
spent 35,000. Now we are
Mm.
offering you property school for $500. We don't make money out of property school. The reason we do property
Mhm.
school is to get you a supply chain. Now, Maggie, you did property school as well, right?
Yes.
And yeah, and that's where we ran into Maggie, and we obviously due to her skills, we hired her. She has very detailed skills which we lack. Maggie is a very
Mhm.
detailed person. She likes to look at the last centimeters. Um, Now, then you've got a bigger IQ level than Maggie. How many, how many, how many times did you have to do your property school, or what did you pay for it?
Property school, I've probably done it twice. Because honestly speaking, first time I went through, all the numbers went through my head. It was so new. But then,
Oh,
I did the mentoring course as well.
yeah,
But one thing that I took away from, what you said today is to surround yourself with like-minded people.
yes.
And for me, it was the fact that, education was such a great thing, which I didn't have when I started at property investing. So I invested in myself into different programs, and to date, I've spent close to $100,000 in property education, and to get me where I am.
Is it true you were the first one who failed? Or you had to reset? So, so guys, Then has a lower IQ level, so to go back again, do it again and
No,
again.
no one's gonna come and book me here. I'll ask for help now after you say that.
No, that's smart. That's smart. I mean, he did it again because he wanted to keep growing his supply chain,
Mm.
and that's why he kept going again and again. So, compared to then spending what 2014, 15, you spent about 100 grand then.
Yeah, it's 15, 16, yeah, about 3, 4 years, yeah,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So
combined.
that's what you've spent. Now, what we do at property school is we give you access to all this for $500 plus GST. We don't make money out of this, right? Let's just be clear. The reason we give property school is so you get the access to all the supply chain. Now, we've got an old property school course, and Maggie, do you want to talk about the new one that's coming along?
Yeah, so we're doing a live online, so it's delivered over Zoom course starting on the 6th of August. So the last time we did it live was around time of COVID, wasn't it? In the first lockdown or soon after. So it's a few years back now. It's fallen a bit out of date, and we've been doing lots of new projects and have exciting examples and things to add in, of course, updating all the information in there and updating various specialist topics that have changed since then. So it'd be a really great opportunity to redo the course and refresh and ensure we're all up to date and looking at the greatest new examples.
Yeah, and again, new
Mm.
supply chain as well. It's all the supply chain and everything. So it's very informative. Again, it's about just promoting property ideas. So, Maggie, how does this new property school work?
So we'll deliver it live every Wednesday evening, starting on the 6th of August. We're expecting to run for 7 weeks, maybe 8 weeks. But each session will be recorded. So if you're not available to attend live, you can watch the recordings afterwards. And of course, if you're live, you can submit questions and we'll answer them then and there, or at the end of the session that night. But if you're watching a recording afterwards, you can email in a question and then we can respond to them in that way. Access to the recordings will last for 12 months, so you can complete the school live. Don't have to worry if you miss a session because you've got something on. But then you can repeat the course or repeat specific topics that you want to rewatch again. Yeah, especially if something's new, it's really handy to be able to return to it more than once.
Yeah, and if you sign up today, we got a special going on. So if you sign up today, you pay 400 something for it. Then if you can go back. If you sign up, it's
495 on special.
495. Yeah,
Mhm.
on special. Normally it's 595. So if you sign up, and then we'll give you a book of your choice. But what I'll do is I like to give things away. I'll give you both books if you sign up today. You can have both books for basically free. You also get an initial meeting with one of our GRA consultants. That's about 500 plus GST an hour. You get it for free. And then you get a 7 week wealth sweat access. That's the software that we use to analyze deals. You get access to that for free. So yeah, and then obviously, if you are GRA clients, then if you can go to the next slide, if you are a GRA client, you'll get 50% discount if you sign up. So that's just something that we're promoting again, helping our clients to bring up to the give them knowledge about property investing and what to talk to others about it as well. So if you are a GRA client, you will get 50% discount. So I presume it'll be about 250, Maggie,
Yes,
for
that sounds right.
GRA clients. Yes. So if you do sign up, you get 50% discount. Now, if you do end up paying the full price, don't worry, we'll send you the difference back to you. Will be fair. Now, this is something I talk about all the time in my presentation. Insurance, guys, very important. I'll be quick here. Now, if you bought properties 10, 15, or 20 years ago, you've probably insured the property for three, four, $500,000. You haven't looked at your insurance again. Now, I can tell you the cost of replacement is probably double the price, right? So very important. Go and look at your insurance. Make sure you've got the right cover on your rental properties, on your family home, on your businesses. Very important, right? So we use a company called Initio. You can send them a list of your properties. They'll price it up for you. And if you tell them you're from GRA, you get a slight discount on your premiums. We use Initio. They've literally insure 100% of properties, and we get good discount from them. Um, and most of our clients are using Initio now as well. So please check your insurance cover. Make sure you have the right cover. If something was to go wrong, touch it, nothing goes wrong. If something was to go wrong, you want to get the right or fair amount of funds back from the insurance company. I never feel sorry for insurance company. They charge so much. So make sure you get the right cover in place. Now, something that I'm promoting in my client base, and I'm on a lot of people's back about it. Guys, personal insurance is equally as important as investing. You've got to have health cover in place. You've got to have life insurance in place. You've got to have trauma cover in place. If something was to happen to you, you want to make sure you don't have to rely on your family members. Your insurance cover will look after you. And if you've got kids, it's so cheap to insure kids on health insurance. I'm not talking about life insurance, on health insurance. I spend about $700 a year insuring each of my kids, so my daughter and my son each, and I use about $17,000 a year on my son. He's got eczema, so we use about $17,000 insurance cover every year. Even this morning, I was getting his eczema sorted, and it was all paid by the insurance company, right? So just put it in place. I can afford it, but I just did it at the time he was born. I just ticked and said, "Yep, you can have health cover." And since then, the insurance company has been paying for all his eczema issues. It's expensive. Eczema is expensive, and not asthma, eczema. It's very expensive. So make sure you have insurance cover in place. Here's the biggest thing: if you do have insurance or health insurance, because you're part of insurance company, you get immediately looked at if you've got any issues with you. Now, if you can afford to pay the provider, they don't care. They attend insurance jobs first because there's a big referral for them. So it's important to have insurance so you can get in there quickly in front of a specialist and get yourself sorted. So we use a company called riskdirect.co.nz. If you contact them, they can review your insurance policy for free and get back to you regarding any changes you need to make. They can't sell you, forcefully sell you insurance. They're not allowed to do that. They can look at it and recommend changes. And unless you don't have insurance, they can sell you some new cover. Anyway, if you get a chance, email them. They'll sort it out for you. So, guys, we're coming to the end of our presentation. Look, if you do want an initial meeting, please scan that QR code there. It'll come to a form. Fill it out. We'll hook you up with a free initial meeting. This is for new clients, not existing GRA clients. For new clients, you will get $500 plus GST an hour of free meeting. So that's worth a lot. We talk about asset protection. We talk about tax planning and advice, and any sort of accounting services you need. Now, we also talk about properties in there. Now, if we feel like you need some property help, we'll refer you to Then or Maggie. Now, if you just want to see Then and Maggie, that's easy as well. If you fill the form out, write a note there that you'd like to see Then or Maggie. They can organize that meeting for you. Now, Then and Maggie are not free. They're 250 plus GST an hour for the meeting. Now, if you need anything or you need to get hold of anyone, just feel free to email Amy or call her, and she'll sort it out for you. Now we're going to take questions, guys. We've got a few questions coming through. Then, or Maggie, can we start looking at the questions?
Yeah, absolutely. So Richard asks, is the disability tenant a private tenant or government association, not for profit?
Normally, disability tenants come through from a service provider who obviously manages the tenants on behalf of the government. It's not for profit, and they've got tenants that have specialist needs. So when we look for properties for them, we kind of have to match their criteria. You just can't go and buy any properties. It has to match their criteria and what they're after.
How did you get that reno cost back? So,
So
no doubt this is a question about that same property.
yeah. So when you do disability homes or when you sign a long-term contract, there's always an incentive from the provider because they need the properties to have certain things. It's got to meet the tenant's criteria, like wheelchair access, commercial vinyl in the bathroom, so that if the tenants fall, they don't hit themselves, the stuff like that. So you can always negotiate with the providers at the time who's going to cover the cost of redoing the houses, the lighting. They might need hot water cylinder plus gas, or they might need you to redo the whole driveway, so they can push their tenants around in a wheelchair and stuff like that. Yeah.
Next, what happened to the 200,000? Sorry, I missed that part.
Well, the 200,000 was reimbursed back to us to meet the criteria. Sorry if we didn't make it clear.
And that was because that's what you negotiated in your lease term
Yeah.
at the outset with the provider. Yeah.
Yeah.
Service restrictions. Water Care, I think this is, already have plans to upgrade service provision. What do you see about the long-term property holders? Could there be bargains to get those properties now and hold? I
So,
suppose potentially, but personally, I'd buy somewhere where you're not subject to those restrictions.
yeah, because Water Care was talking about 15 to 20-year restrictions here.
Mm.
So, I mean, unless you can hold it for 15 to 20 years, it's a long time to hold before you can get, you can have access to water. So be careful. Make sure you do your DD before going unconditional.
Mm.
Very important.
But the
Mm.
other thing also to consider is also how, the restrictions came about as well. It came out of no blues. So, whether you want to take that risk moving forward too, whether, would that move up? Will it be available in 15 years, 20 years, 25 years? We don't know.
Yeah.
Well, exactly. They might indicate a time from now of 10 to 15 years, but what if it takes 30 years?
Yeah,
It's,
exactly.
mm,
Exactly. I don't trust any of these providers and what they're saying. Because what's going to happen is whoever's making all the decisions now, they're going to leave in 5 years, and then you're going to have someone
mm,
else to deal with. So be very careful.
exactly. Government might restructure something or make
Yeah.
funding available or take funding away. It's so many factors that are completely out of your control.
Mm.
Um, it doesn't seem like um, a great strategy. Tammy asks, are freehold apartments a good buy for first-time investors, specifically the ones on fixed leases to operators such as Quest, Ramada, etc.?
Yeah. Now you've got to be very careful here. Again, this is a very good question. So everyone listening to this, listen to this very carefully. If you're buying a serviced apartment, so like Quest or Ramada Apartments, you've got to be very careful. It's called zero rated. What it means is you've got to be GST registered. Now, your pre-approval could say that you cannot buy a property like this, right? Because these properties are GST registered, you're an obligation to the IRD in terms of income coming in. You've got to return GST back to IRD on the income. Yes, you get to claim GST on some of the expenses, not all of them, because you can't claim GST on interest. So you might think you're buying something cash flow positive. It ends up to be negative once you pay the GST. Now, if the value of the property goes up and up and up, you're going to owe 15% GST on that back to the government. So for somehow, if Quest moves out and now it's become a normal residential rental, you've got to write a 15% check back to IRD. So most banks will obviously give you a hard time if you're buying a property like this, and you're required to be GST registered. So be very careful. Um,
Mm.
most of those properties are bought by people who are cashed up, or they've got good funding strategies put in place. So we don't really see a lot of people buying this kind of assets at the moment, unless they're getting a bargain. Mm.
I'm not familiar with them myself, but could they have hidden costs as well, so similar to a body corp, where
Yes,
yeah, you have to make
yes,
a contribution and it's out of your control.
exactly. It's
Yeah.
100% out of your control. They do have body corporate, they have management fee and all of that.
Mm.
Yes.
Yeah, so I guess
Uh,
in
And
comparison, if you just own your own normal rental property, if it needs a new roof and you're a bit tight, you could just repair it, do a patch repair,
mm,
and ride it out for perhaps 12 months or something.
yeah.
But you don't have that option if
Yeah, and you got to be GST
you're not in
registered
control.
here, which is
Mm,
another complication. Because
mm,
every income you're getting, you've got to pay 15% back to IRD.
mhm.
Yeah. So every dollar you get. Yeah.
Liz asks, is it better to focus on buying new builds or versus older brick and tile units as an investment property to minimize having to invest significantly, e.g. double glazing, etc.?
Well, if I was to look at this, if you're buying an old property, if you're buying at the right price and you can put the money into fixing whatever issues are, you don't have to double glaze it.
Mm,
It's not a requirement. I don't think it's a requirement to double glaze properties. But sometimes the old units have more car parking, so tenants like it because they can park two cars. Whereas
mm,
sometimes the new properties don't have any parking. Obviously, the new builds are better because it's a better quality build, double glazing. You got new heating systems in. Everything's got 10, 15 years on it. So new builds are much better, but it all depends on the price. Are you getting a deal or not? If you're getting a deal, discounted, equity, instant equity, good rental income, why wouldn't you buy a new build or older property? It doesn't matter. If the deals stack up, you buy it.
Uh, Sunny asks, are property investment courses tax deductible?
Yes. Yes. So if you do a property course like property school, yes, it is because we're giving you a list of supply chain. Now, if you're doing property mentor, for example, if you're learning how to trade properties and you go and pay a 15, 20 or 45 grand, that is deductible because that gives you a chance to learn about property trading. But if you're going to do a $35,000, $40,000 course, property course, learn how to buy rental properties, the ID is not very clear regarding claiming that it's an expense. So if you spend 40 grand learning about properties and then you buy investment property, you can't claim it. Basically, ID will push back on it. So we got to find ways of claiming it.
What are your thoughts on investing in social housing where reinstatement costs, etc., are covered by the social housing provider?
100%. If you've got a social housing provider that's happy to reinstate your property, which we have on all our properties, why wouldn't you deal with them? Because they can cook meth, they can reinstate it, right? They can break the windows, you know, they can live next to ten. It doesn't matter, right? So why wouldn't you do it? Now, here's the most important part. Get the lease before you sign the lease agreement, run it past your insurance company. Make sure they will insure the property. Actually, it applies to all the properties. Every property that I own that's insured with the insurance company, I send them a copy of the tenancy agreement or the lease agreement because I don't want them to ever go, no, you didn't give me a copy of that. I want them to know what I've got, who I've tenanted, and I've got it covered. Now, I don't care if they read or not. They don't read my tenancy agreement, it's their problem. But I've provided them a copy of it. That's very important. And I do that with all my properties.
Michael has a question relating to flooding. For properties that are marked on the maps as flood prone, but where the floor is above ground level and they did not flood, how tainted will these properties be come resale time?
Now, do you want me to answer that, Maggie?
Mm.
If a site has flooded, not the property, right? If a site has flooded, it gets marked on those GSI reports. So people know that there's a flood path,
Mm.
right? And people know that it's going to be hard to develop those sites. So yes, they are going to be hard to sell. And look, your neighbor might not be on a flood path. He might get 1.2 million for his site. You might get 950 for yours.
Okay.
Because
So
yeah,
Michael says that it did not flood.
yeah. But
So
remember,
it's a flood prone area, but didn't actually flood.
again, it's marked as a flood-prone area. It's it's the engineers and the council have issues with you building houses there, so they'll ask you to do more stuff on it.
Yeah.
I
If
guess
you
another part, sorry, I'll add to that. There's another part of it is that, they need to remodel the sea levels and the horizon again in
Mm,
every 100 years. So what you see on the map is and the levels might have changed because I've gone through that exercise, but it's the same question as you see a plaster house but doesn't leak. You know, it's that perception on the buyer.
mm,
They may want to buy it, but they're always looking to buy it at a discount.
mm.
So
And that's what I was
that's
saying. The neighbor could be 1.2 million, and suddenly you're having to sell it for 950. Because that's what the buyer will do. And then, and I see this all the time in Maggie as well. If you brought that site to us to analyze, we'll be telling you to go and ask for discount.
yeah.
Because to build a house on a site like that, you've got to do extra engineering.
Mm.
You've got to put extra catchments in there, you're going to get charged more by the engineers if they're
or
well
would be
aligned.
advising you to go
Yeah.
buy something that isn't flood prone.
Yeah. Unless the price is right and you can just rent it. Yeah.
I think it's always a good idea to put yourselves in the shoes of a purchaser. If you're looking to spend, whatever you're hoping to get for your property, are you going to be interested in that property, or are you going to shy away and find one that isn't flood prone or isn't potentially going to leak? Or
Yeah. Exactly. We got one more question
One
coming
more
up, and
question.
then I'll tell you a surprise I have.
Um, when you buy with the intent to add a dwelling, do you get a loan application covering the new dwelling as well, or is it a two-step process?
Oh, it's definitely a two-step process. You can't buy a property and say, "Oh, this is what I'm going to plan to do with it, and I want a loan." No, it's a two-step process. Once you buy the property, then what you do is you go and get an architect to give you a draft drawing, what it's going to look like. Then you take it to the banks to fund the resource consent or the building consent, or if you can fund it yourself, get the drawings done, go and get your resource consent, building consent, then go back to the banks and say, "Look, I've got all this in place. Here's the fixed price contract from a builder. Can I build?" It's
Mm.
two-step process. It takes a while. Now, guys, I is there any more questions coming? But I've got this
No,
special.
that's it.
Well, then Maggie and I were prepping for a presentation, and once we hanged up, I got a call from one of our bankers, and he said to me, he's got a special product today. They've got 300 million in the bank account, and they're wanting to lend money. So just for GRA clients and anyone associated with GRA, they have agreed not to charge a fee. So this is a second tier lender. They've agreed not to charge a fee. They will be lending, their lending interest rate is 6%. And if after the next announcement, the interest rate goes down, they will reduce their interest rate as well. They can do a 10-year interest only loan. So 5 plus 5. So you get 10 years interest only loan. Um, they can give you a 30-year loan term. If you want a 30-year loan term, they'll give you 30 years. So remember, this is a second tier lender. It's not a first tier lender. No fee, right? Big tick. This saves you 18 or 20 grand straight away, right? They do have a establishment fee of $750. The reason they charge you that is so you're not wasting their time, right? They'll just do that. Um, Interest only, 5 plus 5 years, so 10 years interest only. Um, as interest rates go down, they will reduce their rate. Now, I said to him, "Will you offer this on a family home?" They said yes. And they will do 80% LVR. So they're happy to do that. So this is insane. This is a good loan. I haven't seen one of this in years and years to come. Now, they do have a limit. They can lend you up to $3 million. Unless you have multiple entities, they can lend you more money. So if you are interested in this, fill out our form, email it to us, and I'll hook you up with this particular banker. Now, he said to me he's got 300 million now, and he's got another 500 million coming to land. And this is why he's wanting to lend this money. He will not lend on commercial building. He's only doing residential rental. That's where it's going to happen. Now, you can ask Maggie or Than, that's a bloody good deal from a second tier lender coming
Mm.
on,
At six
right?
percent.
At 6%, no fee. So you're not
Mm.
paying any sort of fee, right? Only $750 is as an establishment fee. That's it. And yep, so that's only for GRA client base. He's offering the deal. And he's desperate to lend because he's got too much money sitting in the bank account.
Well, we're ready to borrow.
Yeah. I was actually getting quite excited when he was telling me that. I'm like, wow, I haven't seen one of these products,
Mm.
you know? Yes,
Right.
he'll be. So someone's asking a question, will they do short-term lending for trading? He said, yes, he'll do that as well. He's happy to do that. So again, if you fill out the form, send it to us. I will pass you on. And if you, like I said, if you're part of a GRA client base, he won't be charging you any fee except for $750 establishment fee. Yep,
Mm.
Ooh,
there you go.
serviceability.
Yeah, and he's not really interested in serviceability as much. They've got their own test. They're running it. So I suggest why not have a good look at it. I was actually thinking of giving him some more properties at 80% LVR, and if he's going to reduce his interest rate down, he said he will keep reducing his interest rate down if the LVR comes down. So
If the OCR comes down.
OCR, sorry, OCR
Mm.
comes down. He's going to keep reducing his interest rate.
Mhm. Is
So
it capped at 6% maximum though? If
no,
rates start going up again in the future, is
no, you're
6%?
allowed to fix it two to 3 years. He'll
Uh-huh.
let you fix it if the interest rates are 4%, he'll let you fix it for 2 to 3 years. But he's trying to change his product to 5 years as well, so you can
Mm.
get an interest rate for 5 years. Now you got to remember he's doing 10 years interest only, 5 plus 5. That's insane. That's insane. I mean, that's pretty hot, you know, in a nice way. It's pretty hot.
I thought you found that very
Yeah, I was actually thinking about borrowing the 300 million for myself. Forget about
so you
you
got
guys.
turned on with that news.
Yeah.
We got a
So
question here.
yeah, go for it.
Yeah, if your tenant is a rent by room, single tenancy to them, and they rent it out room by room, hmm, and it's 6+ rooms, do you need to pay GST? I don't quite understand exactly
Okay,
what they're asking. Can you figure that out?
yeah, I understand that. So what are you
Mm,
saying is if you've got a tenant and the
mm,
tenant has a tenancy agreement with the landlord, right? And that tenant then decides to rent by the room, well, that's their problem,
mm,
Yeah,
right?
they technically
The,
subletting.
subletting, well, that's what they're doing, right? And that's their problem. Now, the thing is, if you've got a residential tenancy agreement in place between the landlord and the tenant, right? Let's say it's 50 grand a year, you don't need to be GST registered. Even if it's 60 grand a year, you don't need to because you have a tenancy agreement in place, right? So that's important. Now, let's say you have a tenancy agreement with each of those tenants and your rent is over 60,000 a year. You will need to be GST registered at that point. So, very important, that you work out where you sit. If you've got one residential rental tenancy agreement with one tenant, you don't need to be GST registered if it's a residential property. Yeah.
mm. But if you're a boarding house landlord and you're earning more
Yeah.
than 60,000, you have to
Uh,
pay
You have
just
to pay
GST.
GST and
Mm,
you have to put a GST claim on your property,
mhm,
right? So you have to file a GST return, put a claim on your property because now you're earning more than 60,000 from each of the tenants. You have 6, 7 tenancy agreements. You have to notify your bank that you're going to put a GST claim in. Not only you have to put a GST claim in, you have to notify your banks as well. So really important. So, Sunny, this is actually quite a complicated question. So, you probably need to talk to an accountant, talk to a lawyer or broker first before you decide to make a GST claim and make the big move. Because if
mm,
you don't take the bank's permission and you claim GST on the property, the banks can call up the loan. There's a
mm.
little agreement in your loan, or the little condition on your loan agreement, saying you're not allowed to claim GST on the property without the bank's permission. So always get that permission in writing from the banks. Yep.
Uh, Chloe asks if the RFI link is where we get in touch about that lending opportunity.
Yeah, this
So
is the
if,
screen. So you
okay.
you fill out the form and you send to us and say you want this lending opportunity, and we'll hook you up with that.
Yeah, so that's the QR code that's up at the moment, the one that
Yes.
takes you to the RFI page. Uh, Leo, if you have 3 houses rented with overall more than 60K rent and do you have to be GST registered?
No, no, no. So your rent could be 200,000, 300,000 a year, right? If you're doing residential rental properties, you don't need to be GST registered. But if you're renting by a room and you become a boarding house, that's a different story,
Mm.
right? If you've got 3 houses, 3 different tenants, and you're earning 80, $90,000 a year rent, that's what we call residential rental income. You don't need to be GST registered. Yeah. So, guys, I see there's 51 still people are still listening to us. Bring your questions in, fill out the form. Between Megathen and I, we are about $1,000 an hour here. So you got free service here from us today. Remember, you can ask me anything complicated as well. So I'll hang around for another 1 minute before I'll fully log out. Um, if you've got any other questions coming. But I enjoyed the presentation today. This is the first time we did a presentation on properties that you probably should be avoiding and how you should be analyzing property deals. We try and make our presentations different and make it exciting for you as well. So yep, if you want one of the meetings with us, feel free to fill out the forms. But if you've got no other questions, we'll be saying good night. There's something else that's come through.
Here's people sneaking in quickly.
Yeah.
If it's rent by the room and 5 rooms or less, not a boarding house, would you agree it's not necessary to be GST registered even if over 60K?
If you've got five rooms or less, and you're doing a boarding, well, it has to be a boarding house. If you say it's not a boarding house, you can't claim GST. It has to be a boarding house for you to claim GST and return GST. So remember, if it's a boarding house, you have to put a GST claim to claim GST against the property. So if the property is worth $1 million, ID will send you a check for $150,000, and then you have to return GST on your income. If it's a residential property, right, it's not a boarding house, then you don't have to be GST registered. So that's important to differentiate that. If it's a
I think
residential
there's
property,
probably easy to get confused because there's or boarding house as a definition is used, I think, in building legislation or Residential Tenancies Act, and then would have different meanings for tax. And then again, when there was no interest deductibility, I think boarding houses were exempt, were they, so long as they had 10 rooms.
yeah,
Yeah.
something along that line, Mickey.
Mm.
It's yeah, it's. But look, feel free to come and see us, and we'll guide you through that.
Can you buy a family home and put the new lending against your investment property?
Yeah, so that's what we call a restructure of loan. The answer is, I'll be 50-50 here. We can probably achieve you something, Nick. We'll probably do that in probably private. I wouldn't want to say it publicly, but we can probably achieve some sort of deductibility for you and get you the outcome that you're looking for. It's what we call a restructure, a split loan restructure. We can do something like that. Yeah. So get hold of Amy and organize a meeting time. And it takes us about an hour and a half to work that out for you. And we'll do that. Thank
All
you,
good.
guys. Have a good
Thank
night.
you. Good night.
And
Good
if you got any
night.
more questions, email Amy and we'll sort it out. Cheers. Bye.
See you guys.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.